So it's Canoe Talk live with Steve Schoen and Tim Stauffer, and we're back at it. This time we've got about 8 questions beforehand, and I am just checking the Facebook here, so why don't you introduce yourself to folks and just tell them what you do here, in case they're new to the broadcast.
All right, I'm Steve Schoen here at Piragis Northwoods Company. I'm the canoe and kayak guy, so if you have questions about canoes, kayaks, you want to order a canoe or kayak, you want to help figure out what model would be best for you, you give me a call. I'll give our phone number, 800-223-6565. I'm here Monday through Friday. Answer all your calls on canoes, new and used. We sell new canoes, Winonas, North Stars, formerly Bell Canoes. And we sell a whole rental fleet every year at the end of every season that use 1 year. And we have used boats and trade-ins all times of the year. So any of those kind of canoe or kayak questions, you give me a call. I'll be glad to try to help you.
Okay, Simon, do we have video?
Yep.
Okay, we are good. I want to take care of a little bit of business. We're going to try to keep doing this canoe talk and pulling some outfitting guys, as we've said throughout the year. One of the things we would like you guys to do, because if you're watching this live video feed, it means you enjoy kind of interacting with us on video on Facebook. If you have a canoe from us, if you've paddled a canoe from us, if you know our canoes, if you've tripped with a canoe from us before, we'd really like you to log into boundarywaterscatalog.com, visit us over there, and do some reviews online for our canoes. We like to hear from you guys, what you feel, why you like a certain model. We know a lot of you guys don't just paddle Minnesota 2s, you paddle other things. We've got all our North Star canoes on there, all of our Winona canoes on there. And if you could take the time, we'd love to have a review from you guys, and that'd be a great way you can participate, not just with canoes, but with any product of ours that you've used over the years. Go ahead and do a review. We'd really appreciate it. It'll help other customers find out from a customer's viewpoint what you think of the gear. Now that we've got all the canoes up there, Simon and Steve have taken the time to do videos of almost every model that we have. And you can hear in the background it's a busy day in outfitting. Our phones are ringing, we're getting pages. A little bit of a taste of what goes on around here. So last time we got some questions for Steve and Tim Canoe Talk, and one of the first one was, what's your opinion about the best 3-man canoe?
Well, that's a good question. By far our most popular model is the Minnesota 3 by Winona. It's 20 feet long, it has 3 seats, and if you're going to paddle with 3 paddlers most of the time, it's a great fit. We have more of those than, there's also a Seneca, a 19-foot, 4-foot model by Winona. There's also a 20-foot Northwind, which has 3 seats. It can also have 4 seats. All good choices, but our most popular model is the Minnesota 3. Basically, it's an elongated Minnesota 2 with three seats. If you get that third person to paddle, that thing really flies, really gets you to your fishing hole fast. If they want to be like my wife and just sit in the middle and read a book or snooze, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Our preference for getting into each of these boats and taking them on a trip, Minnesota 3, most often you're more comfortable, you got plenty of room for your legs, you got plenty of room to swing your paddles. That's the one that seems just to fit all the criteria for us. The others do a great job. But
the Seneca might be, the Minnesota 3 is stable, the Seneca might be a little more stable if that's something you're really concerned about. The Northwind 20 is very close to the Minnesota 3 in its performances. If you only paddle 3 people on occasion, you may just consider a tandem canoe with a drop-in seat. You can put a drop-in seat anywhere in the boat, in front of the yoke, behind the yoke, facing forward, backwards, just clamps on the gunnels, doesn't require any hardware, easily removable, makes any decent-sized tandem into a 3-person boat temporarily.
we have a Champlain, that's my family canoe. Oftentimes that's what we'll do. We'll put a drop-in seat in the middle of the Champlain. And that's a great boat, wider boat like the Seneca to go fishing from on that platform. So
exactly.
We had, again, some of these questions came in after people watched the video of the live feed last time. And the second question for the day is, for taking kids paddling, what age can a pair of kids effectively handle a canoe by themselves with their own gear? One thing for an adult with a kid, but two kids together. And I think what he means when he asks with their own gear is, you know, they're going to carry the gear too on the portages. So what ages are we thinking about? And there's a couple of different answers. So
I'm going to turn that over to you, since you actually have some kids.
I do have kids.
I know kids. I was a kid, but I'm going to hear what you have to say on this one. To start.
Well, to start, the first thing Steve and I always want to stress is safety. So these boats, if you're going on a trip, are longer boats, and one of the things you want to do is make sure that the canoe with the two kids is weighted properly, that you're not leaving a lot of freeboard out there in the wind, so that they aren't able to turn or track or even make any headway. But more importantly, if it is a windy day and there's some rollers, that they can't even navigate the boat. So a good way to try this out is to paddle in different conditions, safe conditions with your kids before you do a trip.
Before you load up, yeah, before you go on a boundary waters trip, right? Because
you don't want to do this on a nice, calm, sunny day, because it's not going to give you the correct kind of feedback. What kind of water are you going to be on? Are you going on big lakes? It makes a difference. Generally, when your kids get their growth spurt and they're growing, 10, 12, 13 years old, they're getting some muscle, they're getting a little taller, they can be able to both reach with their arms to do a proper canoe stroke and be able to carry a portage pack. I would think that early teens is about the point where you want to be able to think about putting them in a canoe by themselves, but still it's going to be based on their experience. How are they when they paddle? How do they paddle in the wind? Can they handle a longer canoe on their own? Things like that.
And they're obviously going to be with another canoe with the parents, the adults.
Yep.
Near them to begin with, anyways, for sure.
The same kind of answer would go for when do you paddle with a kid, because you don't want to put a youngster in the bow all by themselves without some ballast for weight and real young. It's better to have them in the third seat in the middle, I think. So it all varies. I want to make sure people are careful and safe to begin with. But I don't think putting anybody out there, certainly under the age of 12, 13, two people in a canoe on an extended trip is the best idea.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What's a growth spurt?
Growth spurt. Well, it's...
In my family, we never used that term.
How tall were you when you were born? I mean...
Well, I had a spurt, I guess, the first couple of years.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
All right.
When you lined up on your football team,
mm-hmm.
and there was somebody who was a little smaller than you.
There wasn't anybody.
No.
Okay.
All right, Simon told me to check the board here, so while I'm doing that, why don't you grab a paddle, because we did have some questions about paddle shapes.
Yeah, we had paddle questions about, let's see, well, yeah, blade shapes, okay? I'm going to start out with a traditional paddle. This is called a beaver tail. You can see it's got a long blade, okay? Long enough that, the shaft has to be longer. We used to all use real long paddles, long shafts, long blade. This is narrower than a more modern paddle. It obviously works. It's good for ruddering. It's good for paddling. It's not quite as efficient as a more modern shape. They have beaver tails, otter tails. Sort of look like a beaver tail, I guess.
I'll take that one.
In the modern era, the paddles have gone like this. They've squared them out here so you get more surface area down here, a little wider throughout the whole thing, and a little shorter blade. Most people are not going to put that whole big long blade into the water, so that was kind of wasted wood up here. So a little shorter paddle overall, a shorter blade. Most paddles are in the 7.5 to 8.5 inch width. That's kind of what the industry has come upon as a standard size. Weaker paddlers or younger paddlers, this happens to be a bent shaft, but you get even a smaller blade, not quite as wide, not as deep. A bigger paddle is a stronger paddler needs to pull it through the water. A younger or weaker paddler can have a smaller blade, like this.
This, by the way, paddle by Sanborn called the Nessmuk, I believe. Nessmuk Ultralight. This might be one of the lightest paddles I've ever held.
Very light.
It's a little bit lighter than one of those.
These are a couple of carbon paddles from Winona, the Black Light and the Black Jack. And the Black Jack, you can see, the racers figured this out. You're not using the area up here in the paddle. You can shave some of this off. This, they've curved it out. Basically, everything you have here is used for power. No wasted pushing water where you're not going to get any action for it. Because again, most people are not putting the whole blade completely underwater. So you've saved some here. So, shapes, traditional shapes work. We get guys coming in here, they want a 66-inch beaver tail paddle. It's worked for them for 50 years, it'll work for them now. Guys who want a little more efficiency go with the more modern style, squared off on the end. If you're a strong paddler and you really like to get a lot of muscle in it, get a little wider paddle. If you're a little weaker, a little younger, a little narrower blade.
Ironically, some of those new shapes in those carbon paddles you showed last, they look a lot like leaf-shaped paddles that you would see like if you went to the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, that might have come from South America or things like that. And so we kind of go back to styles that worked, and they must have figured out something like that then when they were styling paddles. We have some online live questions. One of them is, can you touch, Joshua asked, between the differences in the Minnesota 3 and the Northwind 20? So just a few key differences, Minnesota 3 versus Northwind 20.
Yeah. The Minnesota 3 is pretty much straight keel line, no rocker. If you looked at the side view from front to end, completely straight. The Northwind 20, I believe, has a little bit of rocker like most North Star canoes. You can't see that, but it's maybe an inch or so shallower at the very ends, or instead of, not shallow, but this keel line, instead of going straight, goes up a little bit. And I'm not talking at the very ends, but along the keel line. That makes that boat a little more maneuverable. Boats with rocker turn a little easier. Straight lined boats go a little straighter.
And rocker isn't always like you just said. It's not necessarily a curve at the end,
no,
as much as it is as a rise in the level.
A gradual rise. You can't even see it with your eye unless it's a whitewater, what they call a banana boat, and it actually goes like this, you know, 4 or 5 inches of rocker. Yeah, it's not the shape at the end, it's the gradual rise from the middle to the end of the boat. So you caught me without my catalog. I don't have the complete specs, but I would say that the 20 probably is a little more maneuverable, turns a little easier.
How about the seat placement?
Seat placement's pretty close. The Winonas have bucket seats. The Bells or Northwinds have contoured web seats, a little more traditional looking. Winonas, you can have web seats if you want, cane seats. Performance-wise, very close. We use them both in our rental livery, and they both do quite well for families.
Does the 20 have, the Minnesota 3 has a foot brace in the back. Does the 20 have that?
No.
I kind of like that.
A foot brace is nice. Honestly, like a lot of canoes, I would say these two come down to personal preference. And if you make it up to Ely, you have extra time before or after your trip, we'd let you go out and take a free test paddle. We got lakes 5 minutes from here, paddling around each one for a half hour, which would tell you which one is best for you.
Yeah. Another question is there a distinguishable difference between the Champlain and the Spirit 2 other than 1 foot and the poundage?
There is, and again, I'm not a spec memorization guy. I'm guessing the Champlain is a little wider. I often just call it the big brother of the Spirit 2, or an 18-foot Spirit 2, or the Spirit 2 is the 17-foot Champlain. So very close, other than a foot longer. That's going to make the Champlain paddle a little straighter, a little easier, a little more leg room and gear room.
Okay, I had to slip away and turn those mics on the phone off. Joshua Wheeler has a question. Carbon paddles, fairly expensive, but are they worth the investment? And what can you tell me about them? Do they often come as bent shaft or typically straight? You know, I can answer that question. We could get them either way.
They come both ways.
Come both ways. So what's the trade-off? For us, I'll start this one. We like to have carbon paddles because if you're going on a longer trip, it not only does the bent shaft make things more efficient when you paddle, but the carbon itself weighs less. So you pay more for the lighter weight. In backpacking and canoeing and canoe camping, that's often the way of things. The lighter something is, perhaps the more expensive it is. The more engineering goes into making a lightweight paddle be sturdy and durable. But at the end of the day, you're swinging that thing around. So if you're swinging a club over and over and over and over, the average person isn't used to that movement and even picking that weight up over and over again. So the carbon fiber, the Kevlar paddle mix makes things easier for you.
I would agree. It's the longer distance trippers that are going to enjoy more of the benefits. If you're you go out in the evening for an hour or two, mostly just day tripping, you may not need a super lightweight paddle. You probably don't want to get a club, but if you're a Boundary Waters Quetico tripper, you like to put on the miles, that's thousands of strokes. A lightweight paddle really makes the difference. They're very tough. You're not going to have any more problems with them paddling than you would a heavier paddle. You're not going to want to take a thin-bladed carbon paddle and use it to push off on rocks. That's where you take your spare paddle, your heavier one, or you get out, lift the canoe off the rock, which you should.
Wet-footed in.
And take off.
Yeah. Yeah, and when we say club, we're not talking about probably any of the paddles that we carry. We're talking about maybe older traditional style paddles that might weigh more. A lot of our paddles are pretty reasonable as far as ounces go, and really lightweight. If you pick up something like the carbon whiskey or the carbon Saborn mix, the Nusmuk Ultralight that I just had, or either the two carbon paddles you had from Winona, we're talking 10, 12 ounces, something like that.
Can be, yeah.
That's really light.
Yeah.
So that's half the weight of something that weighs 25 ounces, which is still very light.
Yeah. So don't try to save yourself money and buy a $25 wood paddle at a hardware store or something that weighs 3 pounds. And nobody's going to enjoy doing that.
Yeah. Okay. We've got another question, and this is probably for solo paddlers. I don't know anybody that does it in a tandem, but what's your opinion of using a kayak paddle in a canoe?
Yeah. That's personal preference. A kayak paddle in a canoe. Well, actually, they make them for canoes, and they have to be longer than you would use in a kayak because you're sitting up higher in a solo canoe, a little farther reach to the water. It's definitely faster. It helps you go straight without switching. Well, you're all switching sides each time without moving the paddle over to one side. I would say maybe a fourth of our solo canoe renters request a double-bladed paddle, and they make them longer. In racing, they won't allow usually a double-bladed paddle in a solo because it's an advantage. I prefer when I'm in a canoe to use a canoe paddle. It's just my personal preference. I think for lake paddling, they're fine. For creeks and streams and when you're fishing, I think they get a little bit in the way because you're trying to do little windy maneuvers, and a canoe paddle to me is just easier. Then again, you can lay your kayak paddle on here while you're fishing and stuff. So
yeah. Some people, this goes either way. I've heard people with shoulder issues, like they got some rotator cuff issues. They like using a kayak style paddle, a solo canoe paddle, double bladed. Others will say, I like, because I have those issues, I like using my regular straight shaft paddle. So it all comes down to personal taste and preference, and that again is one of the things that we like to provide. Obviously, if you go out and test paddle a canoe, we let you test paddle some paddles while you're doing that. We want you to be comfortable with the gear that you select from us, and we certainly rent a lot of it. We have a lot of it available for you just to try out, and we always do that. We recommend if you find your...
Can you go 37, please, sir? G37.
We recommend if you find your way up to Ely to take a test paddle in several of our canoes and try out some different paddles. And then you can decide for yourself. But we'll certainly, if you can't make it here, we'll try to help you make the best informed decision we can. What are you comfortable with? People who like to kayak generally like to have a kayak style paddle when they canoe solo.
A couple of things I can add. Generally speaking, in solo canoes, if you're using a canoe paddle, you're going to use a longer paddle than you do in your tandem. You're the only one there. You need to reach out sometime and do draw strokes and things. So if I'm in my tandem, I'm probably using a 48, 49, 50-inch bent shaft. If I'm in a solo canoe, I'm using a 54 bent or a 56 straight. The other thing is, a few guys, especially big guys who paddle tandem canoes alone, will occasionally use a double-bladed paddle.
Yeah.
They're paddling it as a solo canoe, basically.
Right. So that leads us to the next question, tips on paddling a tandem canoe solo.
Solo.
Traditionally, they didn't have solo canoes. Solo canoes, I think, are kind of a modern era type of craft. You would take out your old town, and lots of guys would turn it around and maybe kneel down that way, and they'd paddle.
Or sit in the bow seat,
Yep.
facing backwards.
All different ways you could do it.
That gets you closer to the center of the canoe, what you're trying to do. First of all, perfectly calm evening, paddle it any way you want. Paddle it from the stern and you're going to be fine. Of course, what's going to happen is the front end of the canoe is going to be out of the water a little bit. So what you want to do is get closer to the center. There's all sorts of theories about different kind of hull shapes, symmetrical, asymmetrical, turning it around, paddling backwards. One of the easiest ways to do it that I can think of is the same thing. If you want to make your tandem into a three-person, put a drop-in seat in the canoe. Put it in front of the stern seat, get you up as far as you can with enough legs before you hit the center yoke. You're near the center. Now you're at the center point. You're making it into a big solo canoe. You may paddle it backwards and put it in front of the bow seat towards the yoke. You just experiment and see which way works best for you.
Sometimes if you're going to paddle from the back and you're not going to get more towards center, it helps to put some weight in the front. A quick story, I went on a canoe trip with my wife when she was, I think, 8 months pregnant with Simon, who's now doing our tech work here behind the scenes, and with my parents. And first night out, I threw my tackle box and my rods into the Minnesota 2, and everybody was tired after getting there. I wanted to go fishing, and I didn't put any weight in. I didn't do any of the things you just said. I didn't try to do anything to make life easier for myself. I got in that back seat, and I went out, and it was calm, it was nice. As soon as I got out about 10 feet from shore, somebody asked me something from shore, and I turned my head, and I went over, and everything went in. Tackle box went right to the bottom. But it was just that simple turn of my head, and there was no way to keep your balance at that point.
Right.
You know, so you got to trim everything out the right way. And
I thought you were going to say with your wife pregnant that you had that extra weight up front. It kind of
you thought, and that would have been, you know.
I could say that.
You could say that. I could not say that. What extra weight? Yeah, I don't know. Well, Marty says a dog can come in handy. My 80-pound Shepherd made nice ballast in the front of my tandem.
Exactly.
And I would agree with Marty. Having had dogs out in the canoe with me, and I know you've had dogs, we get a lot of people who bring dogs into the boundary waters, And the dogs are fine with water. They're fine with riding in a canoe. But when you go to start casting, if you're fishing, they're real curious, a lot of them, about the lure on the end of your line. So you got to make sure your dog knows what's up with throwing something on the end of the line, because they will either dive out of the canoe after that lure and tip you, or they'll get the lure stuck trying to bite at it in their mouth. You know, we've heard of that happening quite a bit, is the dog is really nervous around the lure. But other than that, a dog is a nice addition when you're going out by yourself.
My wife and I go, we always put the dog in front of her, between her legs. That's extra weight.
Yeah.
Helps ballast. Keeps the dog where we know where it is, what it's doing. Gets pretty excited if you got a smallmouth bass, you know, splashing around. You're trying to net it. But most dogs learn. You know, I mean, I've never had a dog jump out of a canoe. Well, I have, but not very often.
What kind of paddle strokes does the dog use?
Dog paddle.
Dog paddle.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Yeah, he says, until they come back to see what you're snacking on. Yeah.
That's true.
We had a follow-up question from last time. Somebody missed what we had to say about double bend paddle. So I've got one of those. I'm going to bring it into the screen here.
Yep.
And we'll talk about a double bend again. Here you can see, hold it up just a little higher, and I think you can see the double bend there.
Yeah.
Yep, you got it. So you got a bend here and one back there. And as you explained last time, both of these bends kind of combine to give you some relief on how you hold your wrists.
Right. I have no idea of the geometry, whatever. The people who are smarter than I who figured this out figure that this paddle keeps your wrist at a better angle. A lot of people have wrist issues, and this keeps your wrist at a better angle, less fatigue, less stress. Okay, so it's kind of a specialized paddle. A few people will use it for a little more power. I'm not sure that's what it was really designed for, but you may get a little more power too. I'm not sure, but it's mostly for comfort of the wrist.
And this Viper by Bending Branches, we sell a lot of those. Some years it's been our best-selling paddle. Now that it's popular and been around a while, more people have heard about it. I've seen them have them, so we don't sell as many each year because it's well done. It's made to last. So.
Right. We had the safety question from last.
We did.
Somebody.
Let's see. Well, there's a couple of safety questions. One is, can I safely fish from a solo canoe in strong winds?
Yeah, up to a point. You can be out in a solo canoe in stronger winds than you could if you're trying to paddle a tandem canoe solo. Okay, but obviously it's going to get to just like in a tandem canoe, you're going to reach the point where it's too windy. You should be getting off the lake, or you're just not going to have a lot of ease controlling it. Same thing's going to happen in a solo canoe. So a lot of guys fish in solo canoes, and it's windy a lot.
Yeah.
You know, eventually you're going to reach a point, like say probably a little sooner than being in a tandem. But then again, you're right there in the middle, so it's, you know, once you learn your different types of strokes, fairly easy to maneuver your solo canoe for fishing. So I would say, yeah, you can fish. Was it safely fish? Yeah. I mean, you're wearing your life jacket. You know enough when to get off when it's too strong. Yeah.
I would say, I would agree with you with the caveat that you already said, which is don't solo fish in a tandem canoe if it's real windy.
Yeah.
Be in the boat using the gear that it's designed for. So oftentimes I've gone out where there's a little canoe. That's what it was designed for. So I felt comfortable. I think the key is just make sure that you do everything the correct way. And you know, if it's real windy, don't go out in the middle of a big lake. Don't go out in the middle of big water. That kind of leads us to the next question that we had. Can we review safety equipment? And
you know what? Maybe I'll interrupt you here. We have one more solo canoe question.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Can we speak about solo canoes for a novice? I'm in Iowa, so flat rivers and small lakes. Yeah, we have people who have never paddled solo before who try it. Winona has a boat called the Prism, 16.5 feet, very stable. You can fish, you can camp in it. The North Star equivalent or a similar would be their Magic, 16 feet. If you're a smaller paddler, Winona has the Wilderness or the Vagabond. North Star has a couple smaller models, the Northwind Solo, the Phoenix. Most people, I would say, in learning how to paddle in a solo canoe, it might be easier than trying to get a tandem to go straight with two novice paddlers. Because you're going to learn, you paddle on the left side, the boat goes to the right. You switch over, paddle on the right, the boat goes to the left. It's kind of a quick learning process. We have a lot of people who maybe paddle solo for the first time. We'll get a group that'll go out with a couple of tandem canoes and a solo, and then when they're out at the campsite, everybody takes turns in the solo, and then next time everybody wants a solo.
Yeah,
So,
well, and one of those reasons is just, again, what you said. When you're in a solo canoe, you're completely in charge. If you're paddling two novices, or even a novice and an experienced paddler in a tandem canoe, it can be frustrating. Somebody's got to be in control, kind of like dancing. Somebody's got to lead a little bit. Usually that's the person in the back calling the shots, maybe saying, okay, time to switch. So you switch sides. They're steering. You're a little bit uncomfortable if you're in the front and you are a novice because you can't see what's going on. You want to try to help and steer as much as you can. But if you're in a solo canoe, you kind of get more of a feel for whatever you do with your paddle and your weight. That's what the canoe is going to do. It's very responsive.
It's going to react to it, right.
The Prism is a great boat to go try that for the first time in, because it's got the tractor seat and you're sitting, your legs are firmly in place, and you seem rather stable, I think, in that boat. Mm-hmm. So that's
so yeah, if you never tried a solo, try one. You got a friend who's got one, you know, you live somewhere where there are demo days, go out and try them. You come up to Ely, we'll let you take a boat out for a couple hours, half a day, see what a solo canoe is like. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
No argument on which side of the rock to go on.
Yeah, no.
It's up to you. So.
Another thing people might not know is we rent kayaks, and kind of years ago we got away from putting standard sea kayaks in our rental fleet, and we have basically recreational kayaks in the fleet. We've got a couple of kayaks you could do a trip with, but for the most part they have wider bottoms. They're really stable to paddle, and if you want to go out and have some fun in a solo, you could take one of our kayaks. It's a great platform to go fishing with. The only downside is you're going out in the boundary waters on a trip. It's heavier, and portaging is different. But if you just want to paddle solo or fish solo or birdwatch, camera, shoot, a kayak's a great platform to do that from too. And it's a great way to learn about paddling. Some people feel safer in a kayak. We got a question, live one, let's look at that. Obviously Kevlar canoes are popular in the BWCA for many reasons, but Winona's releasing T-Formex canoes. What do we know about T-Formex? Are they simply a modern version of Royal X, or what? Well, first I'll say, certainly ultralight Kevlar, because we're in the boundary waters, is our most popular layup. But over the years, Winona and North Star, Old Bell, canoes that we carried, they had Royal X layups, they had Kevlar FlexCore layups, they had each their version at different times, fiberglass layups, and Royal X was popular. We sold different versions because I think right now we've put a canoe in all 48 states.
Oh, delivered one?
Delivered one too?
Yeah.
At least one. I mean, and many of them, many
well,
more.
how many states are there? 50?
There are 50.
We've done 49 because we've
done
delivered
40.
them to Alaska.
We delivered to
Yeah,
Alaska.
Oh, yeah.
We haven't paddled one all the way to Hawaii.
Not yet, no.
But we've had people from Hawaii come here and paddle. So, a lot of them.
Yeah.
So, first of all, we've done all those layups.
Right.
And different people over the years, if they live on rivers down south or different types of water, they'll request different layups than ultralight Kevlar. But go to the question.
Yeah, Kevlar is great for a couple things. For the portaging, also for guys my age, car topping, putting it up in the garage, okay, this kind of thing, lifting the boat around. Royal X is a big sheet of material that they heat up in a form and make a boat. It's tougher, it's more durable, it flexes. It's no longer being made. That's another story in itself, but a company has come up with a material called T-Form-X, which Winona is using, and we just got actually our rental Spirit 2. Try it out. It feels a lot like Royal X. It looks a lot like Royal X.
Yep.
We've heard that the skin is a little tougher, so we may not have to put skid plates on it. Like Tim says, it's for those folks who paddle strictly like rocky rivers. People might want a cabin boat. They're going to leave it. All their in-laws and outlaws are going to use it and drag it on the rocky shore, and they know they're going to be rough on it.
Outlaws. Oh,
Some of them.
all right.
I don't know about your family. Going to be tougher. They don't have to worry about it too much. They leave it down on the beach. People can be rougher on it. They can't make them in all the shapes they can. The fiberglass and Kevlar. They tend to be the shorter to mid lengths, river kind of all around canoe, river lake canoes. So I can't give you any feedback yet because we've yet to put ours in the water. Because anytime they get a new material, there's some production issues and so forth. But we'll be testing it out in rental this year, and we can let you know.
Yeah.
But so far, I mean, it looks real good. It's about the same weight or a little heavier than Royal X. It's a little more expensive than Royal X, but it's a brand new generation of material. So
I think part of the idea was, as long as Royal X was around, there was no need to reinvent the wheel. And as soon as Royal X became unavailable, then there was a need to reinvent, but you had the opportunity to do something better if you could. And so this product is supposed to have some better qualities. Certainly people that paddled northern rivers, people that paddle rivers exclusively like down south, and like you said, they aren't carrying that thing everywhere. A lot of them have little trailers too, or they're leaving it at a cabin. They don't need to car top it. So
right.
It has all kinds of great qualities, not just the fact that it's very durable. But that's what we expect from T-Form-X, very durable. So we'll let you know for sure. And if you come up here this fall, be a perfect time to go paddle it, test paddle it,
tell us what you think. Exactly.
Yeah.
We get to our safety.
Yeah, let's do safety. Well, I'll just say, because I have kids, per the question before, safety includes not just gear, but I think it includes a mentality. So if you're going to go out with your kids, you want to make sure that they are engaged, that they are not overtired, that they have been fed, and they kind of have their own ability to bring their own water and snacks and kind of have things that make them feel comfortable. They're probably, as kids, naturally going to be uncomfortable in a life vest to start with because it's not something they're used to wearing all the time, and they'll want to take it off. So help them to understand and provide a good example. So Minnesota and other states, but Minnesota is where we live, where we run canoe trips out of. You have to have a safety vest for each person in the craft, a boat or a canoe or a kayak. You have to have that vest with you. We say that you should wear your vest.
Of course.
And you'll have kids, like I said, that they want to follow your example. You want them to follow your example. So let's start out with having the proper safety equipment, making sure they're not overly tired. They know what's up before you start the trip. Make it fun for them, but have safety vests that fit you and are comfortable. And we carry all sizes of those.
By far, that's the number one thing on my list. The number one thing you can do for safety, well, first of all, the number one hazard in canoeing is drowning. It doesn't happen that often. It happens occasionally. I read all the reports I can find on drowning. Invariably, it's people who weren't wearing life jackets, whether it's canoes, boats, whatever. Wear the life jackets. I know families that have little kids, they get them to wear their life jackets around camp.
Yeah.
Because they're at the lake shore, then they don't worry. They fall off a rock in the water, they're fine. My wife and I and some of my people my age, we go out now, we wear our life jackets when we swim just because it's easier. We just float around the campsite and in our life jackets. So wear those life jackets, the number one thing you can do, okay? A lot of people will take a whistle with them. Tie a whistle on your life jacket. If you happen to fall in the water somewhere and there's another boat you want help, you got a whistle to call. You can use it around camp for hiking, not just paddling. If the kids are hiking, you get separated, you got a whistle. Okay?
High-vis colors?
High visibility colors on the kayaks. A lot of the folks who buy our kayaks are using them back in more populous areas. You might have motorboats, a yellow, a bright red kayak, some bright color that boats can see.
Yeah.
Okay. Plus your paddle tip often is a bright color. Not the issue in the boundary waters. You might want to be the opposite. You don't want to show up. But take into consideration where you're using the boat most of all. Bright colors for those boats. Quetico Park here, north of us in Canada, actually require our people to take a few things in the boat. A whistle, a bailer, could be a sponge, something to get water out of the canoe if you get partially swamped or it's raining. Some kind of a light if you're out.
Mm-hmm.
A jacket and a throw rope. Okay, we don't require those in Minnesota here, and we don't ask our customers to take it other than that life jacket and wear it. Does you no good. It does you no good not wearing it. It just floats away. You know, you might as well not have it. We have cold water here. Hypothermia can be an issue. You fall in the lake, you swallow some water, it's very cold, you get shocked. You could drown. You're wearing a life jacket, you're not going to drown. You're going to float and you're going to, choke and cough and say, oh man, where's the canoe? But you're not going to have to worry about floating, so wear the life jacket. People who are concerned about weather, of course, some people actually take a NOAA weather radio.
NOAA.
NOAA. Now, of course, with smartphones, and we have better coverage up here than we've ever had, you can, most of the time, you just take your smartphone, you go to the Ely weather, you can see what's coming. You can see if there's a thunderstorm coming, if you want to get off the lake. People ask about lightning, that's a bit of a, definitely more people drown. Lightning strikes a few people occasionally. What you want to do is the simplest thing: get off the lake and don't stand by a tall tree. Okay, that's what invariably. That's kind of makes sense what you want to do. Well, let's go stand under the biggest tree to get out of the rain. Don't do that. That might be where the lightning hits. Okay, the odds of that happening are slim. Go stand by the smaller trees. Okay. Get off the lake. Very few people are hit by lightning on the lake, if any. But if lightning coming, there's often big waves. You don't want to get swamped. So stay away from big trees and lightning. Bring a smartphone or check the weather before you go. Get off when it starts. You can tell when the weather's picking up. If you're concerned, head back to camp. It's really fun to watch storms coming in sometimes from the campsite, and the safety of your campsite.
A couple more things I'd say about safety. One is, if you have to ask the question of somebody else and it's already occurred to you in your mind, should I go out and try fishing because it looks like something's coming in? Answer those questions yourself. I mean,
if you got a question, it probably don't.
If you're not confident about what's about to happen, or you're not prepared, or you think something looks bad, it's better safe than sorry. One thing people tend to forget is you're out in the wilderness. This wilderness is particular because it takes a long time for people to reach you when you're out there if something bad happens. So that leads me into something I'd like to talk about. It's safety related because we sell a lot of knives and we sell a lot of axes. I always tell people, if I personally get a chance to talk to them, is make sure that you're comfortable with those kind of sharp tools before you go out on a Boundary Waters trip, if you're going to take those things. We rent in our outfitting department saws. Saws are a lot safer. to take out on a trip if you're a novice, because
Then a hatchet. Yeah.
because you've got, you know, kind of one motion. You know where that blade of that saw is. It better be in the tree. You're not swinging it. You know, it better be in the downed, dead firewood that you find that you're sawing, not in a live tree. The axe or hatchet, if you're swinging that, you need to know, above all, not where it's going to hit if you want it to hit what it's going to hit, but where the end of that arc is. And the reason for that is your shins, your feet, your knees, your legs, those things are vulnerable and they're in the way. So you want to make sure you're swinging that with proper control, that you can stop the swing if you need to. If you're using a knife, you want to make sure you're not doing that on your, you know, close to your person, like on your thigh where there's big arteries and veins and things like that.
You shouldn't be cutting like this. You shouldn't be doing this.
No. That's and we're not trying to be snide. It's just things that people don't necessarily think about. I got my new tool, and I've never used it before, maybe, or I've used something like it. I'm all excited, and we got to get this firewood done, and all of a sudden you've got a problem. So just think safety all the time. I like your tip about having kids wear life vests.
Little kids, right?
Little kids.
Sure.
One reason is the water is very cold up here all summer long. Right now, it's been summer. The height of summer is probably here, middle of August. But when you jump in that water, it doesn't take you long to get down in a lake. You know, maybe 6 feet even, and you have to your body tries to catch its breath. Mm-hmm. And if you're not used to that, you could suck in water at that point. Because of how cold the water is. It's warmer on the surface, but it's cold the further down you go. We just had an occasion last week on Lake Superior, so that's not our water, but it's close to us. Lake Superior is big enough it has riptides, and there have been some drownings recently where people got caught in the riptide, and part of that probably is also due to hypothermia. It's cold water. You know, they weren't expecting to be in the water, I don't think, and they didn't have life. Different things like that. Wind could come up, and I suppose, you know, if you weren't prepared, a roller could knock you out of the canoe. And if your life vest is just in the canoe with you, it goes one way and you go the other way.
You might as well not have it.
You know, I have been running 250 for several years now. When I have the right life vest on, I go in the water, I bob like a cork, you know. You go in the water without that life vest on, that doesn't happen. So it's a good thing.
Another thing I thought of, particularly to our area, is portages. The portages are there for a reason. If there's a portage, take it. Don't try to think, well, we can shoot this rapids, it doesn't look that bad. If there's a trail around a portage, there's a reason. And we get people every year who, we've never had any drowning, we certainly had people get caught in a portage or in a rapids, can get the canoe damaged, they can lose some gear. Worst came to worst, you could drown or get pinned on a rock or something. If there's a portage, take it.
Yeah. Well, and if you destroy that canoe, not only are you paying for it on the way back, but you lost your mode of transportation.
Right.
I mean, so we got some questions. How much time we got, Simon? We're up on time. Let's just look real quick. Any thoughts on padded seats for a canoe? We'll keep the other two questions for next time, but how do you feel about having a padded seat?
I carry my padding, but a lot of people don't. No, I like padding. I'm using padded seats now that have a self-supporting backrest too, so you get a combination. I like a little padding. If you're going to be out there 4, 5, 6 hours a day paddling, it helps a little bit.
Yeah, I think padding is a good thing when paddling, especially for people that might have lower back issues. And to combine that is real easy with a seat that's adjustable, so you can lean back a little bit.
Seat back, yeah.
A seat backer kind of thing. I think it's a great idea, and it could really make the difference in you being comfortable or not being comfortable. And we rent those for people that go out on trips too. Guys, it's been great. It's a rainy day here in Ely, and we enjoyed this opportunity to do Canoe Talk again. Again, I want to remind you, if you paddled any of our canoes, if you own one, if you've got a piece of our gear that you really love, go to boundarywaterscatalog.com and please leave us a review on several pieces of gear of different canoe styles that you've paddled. That would be really great. We look forward to you sharing this video with your friends, and we'll get some more questions and we'll do this again. As Steve likes to say, at the end of every meeting,
be careful out there.
be careful out there.